The Tet Offensive in 1968 had profound consequences for the Johnson administration and the American public's opinion of the war. For those serving in the military and those about to be drafted, however, Tet seemed to be of little consequence.
The bad thing about that was it probably just about killed my mother because she's reading these headlines. I saw them later on, all cities under attack.
It was on TV. Walter Cronkite said it was a bad thing. But we didn't care. We thought we won.
They handed me the M60. I was in pretty good shape. I was the John Wayne type. I had bandolier here, and I had 2 around my waist and carried, probably 100 rounds in the gun over my shoulder, and plus I carried an ammo box. I carried 1,000 rounds myself. Plus I carried the barrel.
My first operation, we marched 18 clicks to Lyon, G-O-Lyn, up in the sand dunes on the coast, and I was dead tired. Did you ever try to dig a foxhole in the sand? The sides keep coming in. And I was so tired when I got my foxhole dug, I slept through half my first battle.
I know that the war looked at as now as being lost or all that, and I'm here to tell you that every contact I was in, we won. There was no doubt about it. If you go by body count and any other way, we won those contacts.
We actually turned across the ambush, and then they had to go ahead and fight us, and so only 4 tracks were in the fight, and the rest of everybody else just watching, more or less. A guy jumps out of a bunker with a rocket launcher and shoots it, and goes right between the front cupola and me, just sailed right through here. And the guy shot him with a 50 caliber machine gun, knocked his arm off, knocked him down, and he picked the rocket launcher up with the other arm, stuck it between his legs and reloads it, and raises it back up with the one arm he's got left. And then our sergeant says, "Help me, guys, help me." And finally took like 2 50s to knock him down finally. But they wanted somebody to get off and pick up the weapons. And I says, "Get off? That'd be me," because I didn't like where I was at.
Try to answer all your letters like I can on this one here, and that'd give me something at least to talk about anyway. You know what I mean?
Like many Americans in Vietnam, 20-year-old Marine Jack DeCicero used a reel-to-reel tape recorder to communicate with his family back in Illinois.
Well, that was one of the jets that just flew over, and that, if you heard it, I don't know if you heard it or not, but I better say goodbye. And then I'll be seeing you guys for too much longer anyway. But
On February 6, 1968, Jack DeCicero was killed in action. 1968 was the bloodiest year of the war for both the United States and Decatur. Michael Elbin, Thomas Cooney, Alden Morey, Danny Boucher, Bernard Fox, Philip Grindle, Tommy Shehorn, and Roger Boyd were all killed in the 4 months following the January Tet Offensive.
As we were sitting there having lunch, 3rd floor of this building in downtown Tokyo, a voice comes up behind me and says, "Pardon me, but aren't you on the radio in Decatur, Illinois?" And we were astounded. It was a young chap from Decatur. I used to do a remote broadcast from a mobile studio, moving around all around town. And this chap would come in to this mobile studio. I would invite people in to visit. He'd come in. I'd put him on the air. He'd read the weather forecast for me on the air, stuff like that. He was a high school student at the time. And he recognized me. He had been in Vietnam, had been wounded, and he showed me his wound. He had a slight scar on his left shoulder. And he said, "When you get home, would you call my mom?" He said, "I have talked to her. The Army put a phone call, but she is worried. She is scared to death that I have." It was not a life-threatening wound, but he was in Tokyo on R&R, and he was scheduled to go back to Vietnam. 3 weeks later, I was home. I arrived back home, and I called her and told her of his circumstance. A small scar on his left shoulder. He's doing good. And it was the following Sunday, May of 1968, I picked up my Sunday paper off my doorstep, opened it up, and there was his picture. William Thomas Jones, killed in action in Vietnam.
Jerry Spicer was killed the same day as Jones. The loss of Arthur Martin and William Young brought the total number of Decatur men killed that year to 13. Even with the Vietnam War in full swing, there were still those who were volunteering for the military.
And I decided this might be a good opportunity for me to learn a skill, even though Vietnam was going on, and it wasn't even in my mind that I'd ever be over there.
When Vietnam actually got really going and the draft and everything, not everybody got drafted. I mean, I enlisted, my buddy enlisted.
Well, this was the fall of '68. Boy, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go to Vietnam and I want to fight. And he said, well, hell, you don't need to join the Marine Corps. Just go across the street and turn in your draft card. This was before the draft lottery, just 1 year before they started the lottery. Back then I had a deferment because I was going to college. So I took his advice, walked across the street. About a year later, found myself in Vietnam.
Graduating from college provided no guarantee of avoiding Vietnam. Completing college simply meant that one's educational deferment was no longer in place. This became especially apparent when deferments for graduate school were no longer given.
I wrote a letter back to the draft board, and it said, I'd like to finish my semester. I paid this money out of my own pocket, and I don't want to lose the coursework. And they granted me a stay. It was about 30 days or something like that, and I did. I got to finish the courses that I had undertaken.
Graduated from college, a week later got married, and within the next month I had my draft notice.
Because they tried to draft me in January, but because I was teaching, I got deferred. Well, you can finish the year out and then we'll get you at the end of the school year. May 21st, I just said, I bet you that letter is in the mail. It's such a gloomy day, and sure enough, I got home, there was that letter.
We're standing out in front of my fraternity house. My mother's there, my father, and my grandparents. And they're taking pictures and this after the graduation ceremony and everything. And my mother reaches into her purse and pulls out this, my draft notice, right there while wait a minute, we're not even through the whole graduation thing.
But if you join today, we'll give you your choice of assignments. We have this thing called a dream sheet.
Despite the fact that Doug Nichols was a dentist, husband, and father, he too was sent to Vietnam. While his duties generally did not put him in direct contact with the enemy, Doug witnessed firsthand the brutality of the North Vietnamese communists when he flew to the village of Doc Son.
Doc Son massacre, though, that was a volunteer effort. I was not as a dental officer. I was a door gunner. It's a mountain yard village. There's two little villages. So they came in, they took all the eligible males, kidnapped them, and ran them up north, trained them to be mules, the Ho Chi Minh Trail to bring supplies down. Approximately 600 people were executed or burned alive. That was the worst thing I ever saw.
By the late 60s, you did have a higher portion of draftees, people who had experienced a home front that was increasingly turning against the war. They had heard many of the anti-war arguments.
As 1969 began, the United States had a new president.
I pledged in my campaign for the presidency to end the war in a way that we could win the peace.
Elected with the promise of bringing the Vietnam War to a conclusion, Richard Nixon nevertheless extended the war to nearby Cambodia.
And if something would have happened in Cambodia and we really got killed, then there would have been a lot to pay for. And nobody in the States really knew about it because we weren't supposed to be there.
American forces would still be strongly committed in South Vietnam for the next 4 years. For both the career and the drafted military, the one-year tour of duty there had become a begrudging rite of passage.
Some guys that were drafted and they didn't want to be there, and they had that attitude and that, but I signed up and I was going to do my duty and then go from there.
We just took orders, same as anybody. We didn't know why we were there. We just doing our job.
That was everything. Peace, the peace sign. And that's why I'm given the peace sign sitting on top of that howitzer. That has a big meaning to me, that I'm doing your war for you, but I believe in peace. So,
once Nixon announced this policy of Vietnamization in 1969, that he was going to slowly withdraw, lower the level of America's troop presence from a high of 540,000 down and down. He wasn't clear, how fast that was going to happen, and it turned out to be painfully slow. But that did raise an obvious question on the ground in Vietnam. Do I really want to die in a war that we seem somehow to be pulling out of without really clearly winning?
I felt that the United States was the best country in the world, and I just decided in my own head, this is where I wanted to be, and if it meant going to Vietnam, I was going to go.
In the spring of 1969, Decatur residents Roger Lanter and Odell Craig were killed in Vietnam. They were 19 and 20 years old, respectively. In June 1969, Life magazine published the names and photos of all the servicemen who had died in Vietnam over the course of a previous week. Of the 242 recorded, 2 were from Decatur, 22-year-old David Mills and 19-year-old Robert Getz. Although they didn't know each other, Mills and Getz both fell in the same action.
He quit high school. Why? I don't know why they ever let him do it, but he did. He worked at the cemetery with my dad some, and I don't think he liked that. So then he was a stock boy at night at Gauble. And he thought he wasn't going to go nowhere in life if he didn't do something, so he signed up and he went. And someone called me and told me that my brother had been killed in Nam.
Tom Bowman was one of the soldiers tasked with bringing Bob Getz's body back to Decatur.
When I came in with Bob, we landed at Decatur Airport on the Ozark Airlines.
Of course, my dad, he had just lost it.
As soon as I met him, his comments to me were, "Well, you killed my son." After he and I had a talk, we become real good friends. Mm-hmm. And then along the same lines, I was kind of sneaking a peek at his daughter, and so we become friends, and we spend a lot of time visiting at visitations at J.J. Moran's in the old hallway there. And
2 days.
So then by the time I got back to Fort Leonard Wood, I had a big old package on my bunk, I'm thinking, what in the world is this? And I opened it up, a big old pack of cookies from Linda. She'd made them, and the cookies beat me back to base. So, so I called her, and we started seeing each other after that. And
Tom and Linda soon began a marriage that has lasted nearly 5 decades.
I think we met through the bad times first, before the good times, and I think our marriage was a little bit stronger that way.
John and Annette Hensley are another strong marriage that had to endure the grief of the Vietnam War.
Finally, one day he come to his mother and said, "I have a present for you, Mother." Said, "I'm enlisting in the Army."
He'd already did it.
Yeah. John enlisted in as soon as he got out of school, and they were both in airborne paratroopers.
Jim Hensley, he was kind of like an older brother to me that I didn't have, kind of like a protector. He kind of watched my back, big, tall, lanky Jim. And he was afraid of nobody. That's what I liked about him. and he did not hold back. If he had an opinion, he'd let you have it.
Jim Hensley began his tour in South Vietnam in December of 1968 as a pathfinder with the 1st Air Cavalry Division.
Jim was good to write when he could. Let us know, that he was safe. He didn't go into the fine details or anything, where they're at, or, the bad part of it, but he tried to be cheery, and he kept us pretty well informed how he was.
I got a letter every week from both of them.
Yeah, last pictures we got of Jim, he looked like he was so wore out. He's the kind of kid that he's going to give everything he had, no matter what.
He got malaria, and that weakened his heart, and he ran away from the hospital. I think he'd done it twice. He said, "You ain't keeping me in here," and he went back to his unit.
He made a jump, and they knew there was water below. When they got so many feet above the water, they popped their chute. And he was still in his chute when they found him, so he had a heart attack because he just had malaria and yellow fever. And the jerk of that chute, I think, gave him a heart attack.
Because they've got a cord that whenever they hit the water, they just pull this cord and they slide right out of their chute to keep from dragging them under. And everything was
still
the same. He'd never pulled his chute or nothing. He The
They never
papers
should
come
have told
back
me that.
from the government that he drowned. That if he had drowned, his chute would have been popped.
My mother sent me the newspaper clipping from the Decatur paper. That was one of the things that got me to volunteer for Vietnam duty.
With the deaths of Gary Tate, Stephen Hargrave, Thomas Fletcher, and Gary Best, there were a total of 9 Decatur men who died in Vietnam during the year 1969. If American policy had changed, little about the nature of the war was different. Soldiers and Marines in the field still fought sharp actions against an enemy that was determined to draw blood in short engagements. In turn, for those serving on bases and compounds in support roles, there remained a blurry line separating the safety of the rear and the dangers of the front.
I never paid attention. He was driving the bus. We were all getting on with our bags and everything. And I go to the back of the bus, because I had a big, long seat in the back, and there was nobody back there. I thought, man, I get back here and throw all my crap in there. And I looked up, and here's a buddy of mine from Decatur. And it was Dick Seitz. Dick was driving the bus. And I jumped up, and I said, geez. And I said, Dick!
For this, my MOS heavy vehicle, and finally, 3 or 4 of us come forward, and he asked us if we ever drove a bus. We said, no, we're semi and heavy vehicle. Well, we need bus drivers. So basically what I done, I stayed right there at Long Bend, picked up guys going home there at 90th Replacement, take them to the airport, pick up the guys coming in country off the plane, take them to 90th Replacement Battalion, back and forth, back and forth.
Orders come down, they shipped me to Nam, and I went to a transportation company, and I figured, oh, cool, I'll be motor pool. No, that was guard duty. 7 months of guard duty. I ended up being, like I say, a parts specialist, and with a secondary of 11 Bravo, which everybody's secondary is 11 Bravo, so it turned out okay.
If the enemy, the VC, or the whoever was out, the NVA weren't around Coochie much when I was there. If they'd have known that every bunker around that perimeter was being guarded by clerk typists and quartermasters and chefs, they might have been able to get through the wire. But we all pulled guard duty at one time or another, and it was an experience.
Of course, when you first got over there and you're, in the company and you were just scared, anything would happen. Then later on, you could count at 2 o'clock in the morning being hit by rockets. Before you would dash out, all the lights would go out and that. And then before, because they usually couldn't hit a side of a barn. And you'd pick up your weapon in that and you would just mosey outside to the bunker, wherever you were supposed to go.
We had a great big tower. That's where all this main signals came to us, and then we sent signals all over South Vietnam, Boy, they sent rockets in on us and mortars. They tried to knock us out all the time.
And when the base was getting hit, so we went on this APC. We had to go to that, toward it. And I was sitting on the back. They have a hatch that goes up like this, and I was sitting on the back of it. There was me and another guy, and there was a driver and then a machine gunner. So we go running down through there, and it's at night. And I got my flak jacket on and everything, and I feel this bam hit me. It knocked me back a little bit, and it's wet. It's dark, can't see. And I yell, I've been hit, and I drop down. Get down there, and the guy drops down with me. He's looking at me. The damn rice beetle flying the other way smacked me. He caught me right there. I thought I was shot. I did. I thought I was done,
Our call sign was last shot because we were the last stop before you went into Cambodia. We were trying to patrol it and keep the VC from coming across that river. That was the border between, Cambodia and Vietnam. So the boats were running patrols up and down through there, and we just had this little haven where they had a division of river patrol boats, the PBRs, like in Apocalypse Now. We'd come and tie up there, and we provided them with food and fuel and ammo.
Contact is short-lived. You run an ambush, it's all over in, 10 minutes. And there's devastating results in some cases, but it's not. The Gooks did not want longevity in contact.
You got your mad minute when you start. You start thinking about what's going on then. It's the first thing you do. You got to lay down a field of fire. If you don't, you're in trouble.
We actually walked into the middle of a base camp of Vietnamese and that. They turned on us and started shooting. We all went down and returned fire, and it lasted maybe 5-10 minutes, and then they left.
I don't know if you've ever looked through infrared binoculars. Everything it's like kind of light green, but it's real clear. And I mean, pitch black, you can see for a long, long way. And I was just sitting, just looking, and we picked up this Vietnamese gal, quite a ways off, in a tree line. And at first I didn't know what she was carrying. And so we kept watching her for a few minutes, and she was carrying a U.S.-made bazooka. And so I told the young kid that was the loader, I said, load me an HE round. I lowered the main gun, and I just started following her. And I tried to pick up a grid, on the elevation. And she come out of that tree line, and she probably went maybe 10 yards, and I let her have it. And I mean, she went up like an atomic bomb. I mean, she just blew up. And that was probably one. But, it's like I told them guys, if we'd let her go, she would have come on the backside of us with that bazooka. That bazooka would have destroyed all of us.
For some unknown reason, we were in the open. We were stretched out in a line, and the bunkers were along a parallel line, but back in the trees, unseen by us. And that's when it hit the fan. And people were getting mowed down. And I remember distinctly kind of looking around and think, dang, everybody's hitting the ground. Well, I better hit the ground too, And they weren't hitting the ground because you were supposed to hit the ground. They were hitting the ground because they got wounded or killed. And so from a prone position, I put all the suppressive fire I had on, because then we could see from muzzle flashes, where the bunkers were, and I lit them up. And after a while, just like always, when they see that they have the upper hand, all hell's breaking loose. When they see that they're not got the advantage, they fade away like mists in the day, And
our radio man got injured, and I called in a medevac. I took over radio man. Then I took over company radio man. I guess it was just like, because I got my 45 now. Like, what's that going to do?
You try to mark your position through popping smoke. Of course, the enemy knows this. They know our habits well. So one of the authentication methods was, okay, I got purple smoke. Is that you? Nope. Oh, okay. And then you try to give them some coordinates. Hey, we're dug in here. We need you to lay some stuff in, about a click to the west and along that tree line or whatever have you. So, yeah, you like to see those F4s. They are awesome. Oh my gosh, especially when they come in low and then they drop their ordnance. And we were close enough to where we'd feel a lot of heat from the napalm. Glad that we were on that side, instead of the other side where the bad guys are getting it.
The advantages of superior firepower and technology still meant that the Americans faced an enemy whose deadliness was matched by their ingenuity.
You never moved into a completed fire base, because when we left a fire base, you had to destroy it. So you had to empty all the sandbags out. You broke all the boxes up, and you took all the PSP, the choppers took all that out. Because if you didn't do that, Charlie, as we called them, or the Dinks, would use it. And they'd have a fire base.
I stepped on a landmine, and it was just a Coke can. Little Coke can, and because they got the C out of my leg.
The base I was on in Tamai also served as a pumping station about a mile offshore. The oil tankers and like that would come up, and they would pump into these tanks that was on our base, and then which got pumped out. And I think one of the reasons why they didn't do anything to us, would be my guess, is that there was people had those lines tapped all over the place. And so to destroy that is to destroy their ability to get some oil or whatever.
Many military commanders in Vietnam by 1970 and 71 were as worried by dissent within their own ranks as they were, with trying to contend with the enemy.
Nowhere was this dissent made more apparent to the American public than in the CBS News documentary, The World of Charlie Company.
Young men in Charlie Company, like those in every other line infantry unit, see their lives in Vietnam as an unpleasant interruption of what they were doing at home in the States.
Jim Deremiah served as a medic for this unit of the 1st Air Cavalry Division and appeared briefly in the film.
All right, this is a change of the captain. This is the captain's last day with us. I'd been with him for about 4 months, and he was a real outstanding person. And they're bringing the new captain in, and this one was leaving, so he's going around shaking everybody's hand. And I'll be approaching here in about 5 seconds. I owe this guy $5, and he left before I ever got a chance to pay him. Here I come right now. There I am. I was 24 at the time.
On camera, the men of Charlie Company refused to follow the orders of their new captain.
I mean, there's a road this new captain wants us to go down. We don't go down a road. You're just leaving yourself open for an ambush.
Rice starts down the road himself, but only 5 or 6 men follow.
These guys refused to go down the road. Now, I knew we were stalled because I was sitting, we were waiting to go, and we're not moving.
Second squad reaches a point where bomb craters have cleared the trees along the road and cuts a landing zone for the helicopters. There is no ambush.
While serving as a second lieutenant, Randy Richardson experienced a more extreme form of insubordination.
I'm in the bunker, I get up, and I grab my DOP kit to go shave and brush my teeth. And I'm starting to carry my DOP kit out of the bunker, look inside, and there's a grenade. And I didn't put no grenade in there, so I grabbed the grenade, and I kind of look at it, what the heck? And there's like a piece of paper surrounding it. And it says, well, I didn't read it right then and there, but I got a grenade in my hand, so I rush outside the bunker and I throw it over the perimeter, over down the hill. I duck down, and nothing happened, didn't go off. When I went back, there was a piece of paper that said, the next one, mother, will be live. So somebody, I'd ticked somebody off, apparently, even in the short period of time that I'd been the lieutenant there.
There was a couple guys that smoked, but if you got busted, you're talking LBJ, Long Bend Jail.
You had the juicers and you had the heads. And POL had 2 barracks, and I was there late, so I got put in the heads barracks. That's where they had a vacancy. And the heads wanted to be left alone. After they got off work, they wanted to go in and smoke their dope. They didn't want to cause any trouble. So, and I was, when it came time to go to bed, I wanted to go to bed, go to sleep, get as much sleep as I could before the rockets fell or whatever. So had a guy across the hall from me, was ahead, and he'd get to playing his music real loud, so I'd sit there, and I could tell he wasn't going to quit, so I'd get up and go over and knock on the door, and I'd say, hey, O'Neill, and he'd go, yeah, man. I said, hey, they're trying to go to sleep. Can you turn that music down a little bit? Yeah, man, ain't no problem, turn it down. But can you imagine telling a drunk to turn the music down?
It was funny, the Army used to bring in a barge that was about 30 feet wide, maybe 50 feet long, with probably, 10,000 cases of beer on it or something for the Army base. So they'd float this thing up and, park it out here, and then the Army would have, guards stand guard on the thing while they were unloading it at our base. And they had trucks out there, and we had a forklift, and we'd offload everything and get it loaded up. Of course, while they're down here, we're shooting the shit with them, and our buddies are sneaking around over on the backside and running cases of beer off to, hide.
Our detox center helped guys kick hard drugs. Like there was so many of them that were hooked on heroin that we had to wean them off. And the deal was if you turned yourself in and wean yourself off these drugs, then you could go home, because they weren't going to be able to support a habit because of the heroin they were getting over there was up in the 90% pure.
Just come home, and me and him went downtown to that they closed Water Street, made it a mall, We were down there walking around looking at it, and a motorcycle went around Central Park, backfired a couple times, and I'm under a concrete bench. And he said, "What are you doing?" I says, "You'll be doing this in a couple months, don't worry." That's Marlon Johnson. He got killed over there. Went into Cambodia. He was running a medevac trying to get some more out, and they shot him down. He joined, and he became a helicopter pilot. In fact, he said when he got out, he wanted to go to Alaska and start a helicopter business. He said he could teach me to fly one. He said it wouldn't be no problem, and we'd go up there and have a little business.
A month before Johnson's death, 20-year-old Harley Whitney died in Vietnam. 1970 would see 4 Decatur men killed in Southeast Asia.
I remember one time we had a plasterboard walls, and we was jumping around and playing on the couch. And I'm not sure which sibling, it wasn't Mike, but we put a hole in it. Well, when my dad came home, Mike took the blame. He said he threw a ball and broke it, even though he didn't. Used to take me and my other brother to drive in movies with him on a date, which I thought was pretty good. No, he was a good brother.
I knew him before I went in the Army because we went to high school together. He was 2 years younger, but we still knew each other. He came up for wrestling one year. That's how I knew him. And how could you miss him? He had red hair, and yeah, that was him. So we practiced our shots on each other because we were in medic training together. Out of our unit, I don't even know how many people were in it, but I think 85% of those medics went to Vietnam that did the training when I did.
When he came back, before he shipped out, he spent a night in a treehouse with a bunch of 14 and 15-year-old kids when he could have been out with his friends before he was going to Vietnam. I mean, that to me shows that he cared.
They lectured us about some of you are going to pay the ultimate sacrifice. You're going to be killed over there. And out of that group, Mike Baum is the only one that said, we're all going to go over there, we're all going to be killed. You know, I talked to his family at his mother's funeral. He said that to them too. He had his affairs in order.
Car pulled up with 2 Marines in it, and I don't know why I didn't have a clue what was going on. The people had called my aunt and uncle we were staying with and told them they were coming and to make sure we were home. And of course, then it was bad. I have a lot of regrets when it comes to my brother. We were never real close, which of course now in hindsight you really regret. He was a good egg, did his work. I think he would have done well and given mom and dad grandchildren, and of course miss him very much.
We got hit one time on the perimeter out there, and man, when they let those 60s go, the next morning, there was people all around. Like, 60s cut them in half. You see an arm laying here, leg laying here. It was just bad, man. And we were right beside a little town called Phuc Vinh. They would take them down to that town and just lay them in a straight line out at the marketplace. Their relatives, whoever come through and identify them, if they know who they were, they pick them up, take them to the burial grounds. And they were just laying there like dead hogs or just in a row, stacked up in a row. It was bad, man.
The rule was, if he was outside the wire, you couldn't shoot him. He could stand out there and shoot you all day long. But the rule was you can't shoot him unless he's in the wire. If you see him in the wire, fair game. And the kids would play outside the wire. And they would just jack with you, throw rocks over trying to get the flares to go off and shit, And they would jack with you, and the dogs and cows and all that shit would wander in and get blown up every now and then. And then we even had some Americans. One guy come in from field. He's leaving. He needed a little more dope. So he went out through the fence during the day, went out, got his dope. He was coming back at night. Well, at night, this tower was manned. Well, he had a flare go off. He got killed right there. American. The guy shot him. I mean, this was his job. He shot him.
I went with the captain and the warrant officer and 2 of the other guys in our little office to the village of Cu Chi because the mayor was having a dinner. So we got there, and the mayor spoke broken English, and there was an interpreter, and everything went fine. And when the main meal came after all the chit-chat, we were told that it was fried chicken. And to be honest with you, the chicken leg was either a dog or a monkey. we found that if you broke things quickly enough, you could put it down your leg in the side pocket and act like you'd eaten it. And I don't know if the Vietnamese saw us, but we went home to the base hungry that night, even though we'd been fed a 7-course meal.
You know, it was pretty quiet where we were. A lot of times the war to us was like a drive-in theater because we had this huge no man's land across the river from us. And if something went on, it might be 1,000 yards away or something. So it'd be like sitting in the drive-in theater watching green tracers, red tracers, you know, smoke, artillery being called in. You know, it was kind of you were there, but you were detached from it, from the actual violence and, you know, everything that was going on.
I didn't feel like I accomplished what I went over there for. Was part of the reason why I extended. I came home on leave, and I got married for the first time, and then I went back over for another tour for 6 more months. And this time I went back up to Tamai. I was only there for about 3 days. They were starting to close down these bases and turn them over to Vietnamese. So I left before the base was actually closed. I was still looking for some place to go that would give me and I don't mean this in an ignorant way, but give me the experience that I'm supposed to have while I'm in the service, and I'm in a country where there's a war going on, and I'm supposed to be doing something, and it isn't this.
You're still looking for the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, you're building housing for South Vietnamese naval personnel. I'm not saying I have anything against those people. I don't have anything against them. It's just that that's not, building is what I was supposed to be doing. But I was also supposed to be doing something else. I was supposed to have been involved in the conflict, and I wasn't.
When you get up to a year, it's either your last 60 or 30 days. You get a special calendar, and you start marking the days off. And that short calendar runs right on down to the time for you to de-roast to get ready to come home. Man, I couldn't wait to get on that plane. The bird, what they call it. Catch that bird and come on back to the world.
The planes took off over there. They just about went straight up. They wouldn't get you up. And
everybody on the left side, look. That's your last look. I don't want to see the son of a bitch. I'm done.
Basically, they fed us, give us a steak, and a little bit of paperwork. Seemed me like about 5 or 6 that morning, I was out of the Army. I mean, it didn't take no time.
The bus got in, I don't know, about 4 o'clock in the morning. So here I am, I'm in my Class A uniform, and I got my big old duffel bag and all my worldly possessions, you know, that I left the Army with. And I'm thinking, gosh, I'm not going to call a cab, and I'm not going to call the folks. It's only about 2.5 miles. I've walked further than that. So Shanks mares, you know, I'm humping on down the street right there, walking home. About 5 o'clock or 5:30, I'm knocking on the folks' front door.
I sat for 30 minutes on Main Street and Taylor Avenue. And I could see my house. It's only 3 doors down on Taylor Avenue, but I sat there for 30 minutes looking at my former elementary school right across the street, Dennis School. And I said, I cannot believe I'm home.
Off Ozark at the airport and get a cab home. He pulls up to Mom's house, and of course she comes running out the door to meet me and everything like that. Well, the cab driver gets out of the cab. What's he doing? I done paid him. You know, what's going on here? He gets up and walks up the front door and shakes my mom's hand. And he says, congratulations. She says, congratulations? He says, yeah. He says, congratulations and thank you. I just want to thank you for raising your son. He didn't go to Canada or anything like that. He went to Vietnam.
The majority of American combat troops were out of South Vietnam by 1972. Failures at the peace talk table meant that the country was as dangerous as it had always been for those serving there.
Well, we lost several helicopters and several pilots and a lot of good soldiers at Anlock, which is in, I think it was April of 72, when we had the Battle of Anlock, where they lost the whole city. The Blue Max helicopters did a lot of work up there. So, yeah, we were heavily involved in that. At that time period, it was very, very busy, very hectic. We had a lot of birds I remember we had 3 shot down in one day, and we only had enough rigging gear to rig one. So we rigged one with our rigging gear. We borrowed some rigging gear from another unit, so we rigged that one, and we actually flew one back to base that had bullet holes through the main rotor blades, which is something you'd never do, but we did it.
Richard Wiley was a consummate volunteer. The Decatur youth enlisted in the Army and began his first tour in Vietnam at the age of 17. On June 12, 1972, Rick was exactly 1 month shy of his 21st birthday and on his third tour of duty. As a crew member of a helicopter unit, Rick elected to ride on an OH-6A for a reconnaissance mission deep in the jungles west of Hue City. Upon taking enemy fire, the small helicopter crashed and Rick was killed. Despite concentrated efforts to locate his body in 1993, Wiley remains missing in action.
When that thing was over in 75, when Saigon fell, most of us that had been there, my thoughts were, why did we do that? What was all that for? And I don't know if that question will ever be answered.
I remember seeing that and I thought, what a waste. That's what I thought. Just what a colossal waste of money, lives.
We had a big dinner bell, which is still back there. We rang the bell and forever, and then drove down to church and rang the bell in the steeple down there. Yeah. Of course, everybody thought I was crazy, probably, but
yeah, it kind of make you kind of sad for all the people that's over there giving up their lives. And
that bothered me quite a bit. I think of the guys that their lives were over there and lost their lives over there, and there was a lot of us. And then when that happened, that affected me, I think, more than anything.
You didn't realize you were a part of history. That there was no thought that, hey, this is going to be the last battle of the Vietnam War. That never even occurred to anybody, because it didn't occur to me, I'm sure it didn't anybody else, until I read it in the paper. We went out to start our engines, and they said stand by. And we stood by for about an hour or two and kept calling, can we start engines? We want to head back to Japan. And finally they said, come back into operation. We want to change your mission. And we got to Cubic Point in the middle of a rainstorm, which is not uncommon in the Philippines. The trucks came and the Marines loaded in the airplane. They were young guys, 18, 19, 20, and wanting to go fight. They were damn wanting to go shoot somebody. And they were happy about going. And I was happy to take them, I guess. I forgot the name of the field where we went in Cambodia. It was some civilian field, I think. I don't believe it was a military. It was night, and we got there, unloaded the Marines, fueled, and left. That was our mission, to go there, unload them, and go back to Clark and wait. The next day, or the day after, they sent us back to go get them, to bring them back, and that's what we did. So they took my mission that I was going to haul babies and turned me into hauling Marines, and I'll haul them back, and I'll go home now.